Hey everybody, Lewis here from Status Coup. We're about to do an interview with Shelby Walker. We're standing in Shelby's backyard right now. You can see the cleanup is still ongoing here, and she's dealing with the train still driving through her backyard each and every day. Construction vehicles left and right. Thanks, Shelby, for taking the time. Let's get to that interview right now. All right, we're here on the ground in East Palestine. I'm joined by Shelby Walker. We've interviewed Shelby a couple times before in person and remote. Just a refresher, Shelby lives right on Taggart Street here in East Palestine. The train tracks are just to my left here. The derailment happened, again, just out of sight. Shelby, first off, thanks for taking the time to chat with us again. Yeah, I'm curious how things have been going since the last time we chatted.
We are kind of still in the same position that we have been. Still all the noise at night, during the day. We're still getting sick. We were gone for 6 weeks. They had relocated us. They paid for our rental to go to Florida. They told us that, maybe we won't have to come back to that. But here we are. We're still living in this disaster. As soon as we got back, my anxiety was so bad. Like, I was honestly thinking about seeking mental help because it got so bad. Just coming back to all of this, we were getting headaches instantly, sick to our stomachs, sore throats, just everything. Hard to breathe. It's hard for us to mow the grass, and we have to keep up on the grass because we get fined if we don't. So nothing has changed. They are cleaning up, but nothing has changed for the residents. Right. We're still not getting the help that we want.
Right. And to be clear, too, I mean, you might hear this in some of the background noise, but like the cleanup site is literally in Shelby's backyard, essentially. It's happening right here, right now. And the fact that you're not able to be relocated right now is pretty absurd. Obviously there are a lot of homes in town that are having issues, but as far as proximity to where all of this went down goes, you are in the top 10 houses, probably, as far as being as close to where this happened as possible.
Our house sits 900 feet, and there's 12 houses right in the block of the derailment that people are still stuck with. Mm-hmm. And I know that a lot of them want to get out or get away from the house.
Mm-hmm. And so we were just chatting a little bit briefly here. So they won't allow you to be relocated anymore. And that Norfolk Southern won't allow you to be relocated anymore. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on with that?
Yeah. So our family was one of the ones that they are investigating receipts because we had some hotel receipts and I canceled them and we stayed other places. So now we're like under investigation for their fraud, and which there's multiple families in East Palestine that the same thing has happened to, and they're also under investigation. So now they will not help us with relocating anything. They will not cover nothing for us right now.
Right. Basically based on like changing hotels. And frankly, like, that's absurd. We're 900 feet from where this happened. A massive chemical explosion happened here that we learned in June probably didn't need to happen to the extent. Obviously, the derailment was, you could make arguments that was, bound to happen at some point, unfortunately. But the detonation of the 5 cars of vinyl chloride very likely did not need to be happening after we heard that from the NTSB hearing. And they're worried about investigating fraud, which doesn't seem like fraud at all. I don't know you that well, but I know you well enough to that no. Likely is not what's going on here. It's definitely not happening with a lot of other folks as well. For them to be worried about hotel receipts when you're able to explain the situation should be criminal. Again, we're 900 feet away from where this happened. You've got kids. You all are experiencing symptoms, and you're not able to leave.
Yeah, there's 3 of us in my family. My 13-year-old son, one of them, that has all tested positive for vinyl chloride. And here we are 6 months out. We shouldn't even had to worry about hotel receipts or anything else. Mm-hmm. They should have said to us, do you want to leave? Let us help you get out right at the beginning. We should have never came back after they blew that thing up. Mm-hmm. Never.
Yeah. And, we've heard a little bit about, potential programs for selling your house and moving elsewhere. From what I've gathered so far, it doesn't seem like that's really been put into any sort of motion. Is Norfolk Southern giving, residents here any more information on that, or is it just kind of something that they put out for PR purposes at one point and nothing's really happened with it?
Yeah, we just got a booklet of all the things that they are doing in town, all the cleanup stuff, and it did say in there that they're working on that program. So working on that program it's just all absurd to me that we are 6 months out and still having to live like this. There's no reason that we should have to live like this. They should have been in here, right from the beginning and getting people away from it. If we would have never came back here, we would not have tested positive for vinyl chloride.
Right.
Never. So now we have to live the rest of our life not knowing what's going to happen to us. They're saying 5-10 years down the road, that'll be the time that my son's ready to graduate high school, that he may end up with cancer by then. It's sickening that we have to go through this, and they're wondering why people are trying to get money from them. They call it fraud. No, people are scared. They want out of this. They want a life back. Here we are starting school again. Another year of school with the kids being all displaced. And it's so much stress just for the kids starting school again, new friends, new teachers and everything. But they also have to live with all this chaos and craziness at home. And I think the biggest role is the mental state that people are in, and that they have to deal with this. That I think that's bigger than anything else right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're essentially making everyone do mental gymnastics to be able to, if you are able to qualify for a place to live temporarily, making sure all your receipts are in order, making sure you're talking to the right person at the office. Some people go in one day and they're approved for one thing, and then the next day they're not approved for the same thing. It depends on who you talk to. It depends on your unique individual situation, and that's not how it should be.
No,
it should
no
be
privacy there.
Yeah.
No more. You go into the lobby, they come out, they ask your name, they get your receipts, and then they go back, and then they bring stuff out to you, your check or whatever. Or if there's something wrong, they come out and talk to you right in front of everybody,
Right.
which is degrading to people. Not only is it you're in there like begging for help, but now you're talking about our situations in front of other people. And then if you're getting something that they're not, then that's causing turmoil with people in town. And that's why they're split in East Palestine.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. I mean, we're seeing some of that as well, where you've got different factions of the community and different groups who think some people are doing the right thing, some people are doing the wrong thing, and it's by design, like you just explained right there. I mean, we're seeing the EPA do that sort of thing. We're seeing Norfolk Southern do that sort of thing. And again, some of it is borderline criminal. A lot of it maybe is criminal. Borderline might be being friendly to them with that. But yeah, that's an outrageous situation going on with that. As far as you mentioned the vinyl chloride urine testing and whatnot. I know that you had a positive test. Have others in your household also done these tests, and kind of what have their results looked like?
Yeah, mine was the highest, but I think a lot of it was because I was doing a lot of media interviews and everything right at the beginning down in our backyard, which I know is contaminated. Since I've stayed out of that, my numbers have went down a little lower. We were gone for 6 weeks, so now I'm waiting to see what my numbers are going to be now. But my husband's also tested positive, and my 13-year-old son tested positive, and theirs was both 0.6 something, right. So a little above. Mine started out at 0.9 something. So right. Yeah, the three of us have tested. My son plays across the street with his friends a lot, so we're kind of thinking that's where he got it, because his sister and him have stayed in the same houses the right. whole entire time, and she did not test positive. Right. So we really think it's outside, not so much in our home, but outside of our home. Right.
Yeah, and of course it's one of those things where like a lot of these scenarios are different for different people. So we just left Chrissy Ferguson's house on Rebecca Street, and she's got sulfur running under her backyard next to her basement. They have water leaking into their basement on occasion when the creek is up. So in some cases it might be in the house. In some cases, like this, where again you're hearing the construction noise right now. I mean, there's no doubt that your backyard is going to have issues. You mentioned you're seeking some outside testing, and some of it might have happened already. Obviously, we don't have the results yet, but I guess what prompted you to reach out for that, and had the EPA or anybody provided any sort of testing for you?
No, and that's why I reached out, because the EPA told me that they would not test my backyard or any of the yards here along our strip until they were done with cleanup, which is absurd.
While you're all still living here. They won't test it now while you're still living here. they'll only test it afterwards. Like the EPA doesn't have the resources to do a test now and then a test later. That's
yeah. And they're out here every day, multiple times a day, because we have a little air monitor that sits right here in the front of our house. That also sits right beside my garbage can. So I don't know what you're reading. You're not reading Clear Air because it sits beside our trash can that we put trash in all the time.
Right.
But they're here multiple times a day reading these air monitors that are not, I don't believe they're really detecting what they should be detecting. But
the amount of people at this point, even just on this trip, who I've asked, oh, will the EPA come inside and do testing in your home or test your soil or test your air in the yard or do whatever? And they've all been like, oh, no, the EPA said they won't do that anymore. Is absurd. What is the EPA here to do if they're not going to come in and do the testing? How can they continue to make claims that things are safe if they won't do testing anymore? They are still standing by the indoor air test that they did back in February, which we wrote a story about it back in March, and others have done it, and it's even Mark Durno from the EPA said that those tests were insufficient. The devices weren't picking up chemicals like butyl acrylate. There are other issues with those tests as well, but the EPA is standing behind those faulty results and then won't do more tests when people ask.
Yeah. When they were here, I did have Mark Durno. He was out here, and him and another lady that works with the EPA, she's more on the ground. They said they're not worried about the contamination coming from the tracks this way to my yard. They're more worried about the contamination running because my yard sits the lowest out here. So they're more worried about it running to my backyard every time it rains real hard and it floods than they are from it coming from the track. But right there, you're telling me you're worried about it being contaminated that way. Why are you not testing?
Right.
And even if they do test and it comes bad, what are they going to do for us?
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this did flood at one point a couple months back while the cleanup was going on, right?
Yeah, yep. The end of February, it flooded and my yard was bubbling, and there was the scum that you see in the creeks. It was running across the back of my yard.
Right. And again, they won't do the test, or won't test anything back there. You mentioned too now, so obviously they are concerned about the flooding, and they've said it to you. They've currently been kind of pumping water in and out of these giant tanks that I don't know if you can see them from here or not. They're probably not, but have they explained to you any of what's going on with that, and or have you noticed any changes back here since then as far as managing the water?
No. I did notice at one point we drove across the tracks here on the Pleasant crossing there, and there was a sump pump sitting back there, which would be directly behind our house, and a large hole that they've dug. It was never there before.
Right.
They dug this hole, and this pump is like sitting on the side of it with a water tank sitting there, and that sump pump was shooting water out onto the ground.
Right.
It wasn't going into a hose. It wasn't going. It was just shooting the water out. Right. Then we go down later, and it's off. Whether it's clean water or it's contaminated water, you're shooting water out. If it's clean water, you're adding water to contamination, which is going to go elsewhere. Right. If you're shooting out contaminated water, it's going in the air.
Right.
So either way, that's not helping. And even though people think that they are doing this great cleanup, I don't think that they dug places that are already covered up with like rocks and things like that. I don't think that was dug up. I know directly behind our house was not dug up 30 feet.
Right.
And that's where a big pile of the contaminated soil that they dug from the tracks sat for a couple months.
Right. Right. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you had train cars piled up essentially in this area, right?
Yeah.
Also, yeah. Right.
Yeah. One of the tankers sat on its side right against our property line.
Yeah. And not worried about removing soil in this area, essentially, or even testing the soil in this backyard that, frankly, if you're being forced to live here, you should be able to use your backyard and not be worried that your kids, you've got a nice fire pit back here. It looks like it was, at one point, probably a nice place to hang out.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
We had all kinds of kids' toys back there that right after this happened, we got rid of everything because we didn't trust the stuff being there anymore. Of course, the kids couldn't play on it or anything. But now my kids and grandkids can't even go to their backyard. They can't. We just don't even let them down there. They will come in the house, but they go straight from the car to the house and back. Occasionally, we'll sit out on the front porch for a few minutes, but we don't even like them sitting out there because the truck's just constant back and forth. And they don't care about the speed out here. They fly. Many times I'm out here screaming, slow down. Like, we have animals out here, there's kids out here, you know, it's just, plus the dust
Right.
that they're kicking up is insane.
Yeah.
So they just don't, it's like, who cares about these houses? They're just living in the middle of a contaminated work site.
No, it's frankly, it's ridiculous. Thank you so much for taking the time. Is there's anything else you want to share, please do. I'll give you the opportunity right now. Otherwise, we really appreciate it.
I think my biggest thing that I do want to put out there is we do have like some, you know, government people coming in, but they're talking to the leaders of our town. The leaders of our town are making the decisions about this new park that they're putting in and all the money that they're putting in to the town, but not to the residents. Those government officials need to start talking to some of the residents, especially people out here. Like, we have a business across the street that's not really getting the help that they should be getting help. They want to get out of here.
Right.
You know, the people that have to sleep here every night. We don't want to do this anymore. We need the help from the government because Norfolk Southern, they're not going to help the residents.
Right.
They're just not.
On that, I know I said the last question, but on that topic, I mean, at this point, Governor DeWine, kind of way too late, asked for the disaster declaration to the Biden administration. The request was not perfect either. In it, the governor said that there are no unmet needs in East Palestine. I've been asking people, first off, are there unmet needs in East Palestine?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
I knew the answer to that one, but it's pretty shocking that that's how the governor phrased it. So despite the potential for there being an issue actually doing the disaster declaration, you know, whether or not President Biden can actually do that because there are no unmet needs, in quotes, he hasn't even acknowledged it, President Biden. The administration has done little to nothing here. Has it shocked you how long that has sat there and how little support from the federal government there has been?
Yeah. I mean, they run to these families like if there was a tornado or a flood, they'd be right there on it. And I feel for those people because they lose their homes.
Right.
At the same sense, we have also lost our home. It's still standing, but it's not safe.
Right.
We've lost it with chemical, and we're losing our own selves. We're losing it's just our health is going to be in question for the rest of our lives now because of it.
Well, Shelby, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. We are on our fourth reporting trip here in East Palestine, Ohio. We're currently standing in a resident's backyard that we've interviewed here. She's been dealing with this going on, this cleanup, train still going through her backyard for the months since the derailment. If you want to make sure that we can continue to tell these stories of residents just like Shelby and the many others we've been speaking with on this trip, please consider becoming a Status Coup member. StatusCoup.com/join for as little as $5 to $10 a month. We want to make sure that these residents' voices can be heard amidst this tragic story going on here. Still a tragedy, still a crisis here in East Palestine, Ohio.